Before we dive into the deep analysis, here's a quick recap of what this video is about. Fallout Season 2, Episode 4, titled The Demon in the Snow, looks like a loud, chaotic episode filled with spectacle, Deathclaws, Brotherhood instability, and shocking Vault revelations. But hidden inside a short, easily missed line of dialogue is a clue that may completely reframe the mystery of Vaults 31, 32, and 33.
There's a keepsake box. Something from before the war that Hank brought with him to Vault 31.
This video breaks down that moment, explains how it ties into Vault-Tec's long-term ideology, connects the water crisis and breeding experiments to classic Fallout lore, and shows how characters like Norm, Betty, Steph, and Chad are beginning to realize they're trapped inside a system that's collapsing from the inside. Now let's talk about what the demon in the snow is really doing. Season 2, Episode 4 of Fallout is designed to mislead you. On the surface, it feels like one of the biggest episodes of the season. We finally get the Deathclaw, a creature Fallout fans have been waiting to see since the show was announced. We see cracks forming inside the Brotherhood of Steel. We get confirmation that Vault 32's new overseer, Steph, is hiding something. All of that feels like the point of the episode. But Fallout has always worked best when the real horror is quiet, bureaucratic, and buried under distraction. And that's exactly what happens here. The most important reveal in this episode doesn't come with a monster entrance or a dramatic standoff. It comes during a calm, almost mundane conversation about management, logistics, and long-term planning. Around 19 minutes into the episode, we return to Norm, MacLean, and Buds, and the show quietly hands us a key that might unlock the entire Vault mystery.
The boss, I know you call the shots. Just thought I'd introduce myself, as I was Bud's personal assistant.
At this point in the series, Norm is no longer a side character. He is the lens through which the show exposes Vault-Tec's true philosophy. Norm comes from Vault 33, one of the most stable and successful vaults we've seen so far. It looks clean, organized. It feels like proof that Vault-Tec's vision worked. But that illusion started to crack when Norm discovered Vault 31 at the end of Season 1. Vault 31 wasn't a community. It wasn't a social experiment, it was a storage facility. Inside Vault 31 were Buds, junior Vault-Tec executives, managers in training, cryogenically frozen before the Great War. These people weren't chosen to rebuild society. They were chosen to preserve Vault-Tec's corporate hierarchy. Bud Askins, a junior vice president, made sure that when the bombs fell, management would survive, even if the rest of the world didn't. When Norm wakes them, he quickly realizes something unsettling. These people are completely dependent on authority. They don't know how to operate without a chain of command. So Norm gives them one. He lies.
And as a team, we'll receive these merit dots.
Norm tells Buds that he belongs to a lineage of super managers, genetically engineered over the past 200 years to lead Vault-Tec into the future. On paper, the claim sounds ridiculous. But in practice, it works perfectly, because it aligns with Vault-Tec's worldview. Of course, Vault-Tec would optimize leadership. Of course, they'd create a superior managerial class. Bud's Buds don't question the story because questioning the system was never part of their training. This deception allows Norm to escape Vault 31 earlier in Season 2, and by Episode 4, he's still maintaining the illusion while leading them across the wasteland. On the surface, it's darkly comedic. Underneath, it's deeply revealing. Norm isn't strong, he isn't enhanced. He simply learned how Vault-Tec's mythology works, and he's exploiting it. And then comes the line that sparked a massive new fan theory.
Future Enterprise Ventures?
During a conversation with Ronnie McCurtry, Bud's personal assistant, Norm learns about a previously unmentioned Vault-Tec initiative called Future Enterprise Ventures, or, shortened to its initials, F.E.V. That acronym is not casually chosen. In Fallout history, F.E.V., the Forced Evolutionary Virus, is one of the most infamous programs ever created. It's responsible for super mutants, grotesque biological experiments, and some of the darkest chapters in the franchise's lore. F.E.V. represents Vault-Tec's belief that humanity doesn't just need guidance, it needs to be reshaped. Now, to be very clear, The show does not explicitly confirm that F.E.V is currently being used to genetically engineer overseers or vault leaders, and that distinction matters. What the show does instead is far more Fallout-like. It introduces the concept quietly, in a context that invites the audience to connect dots rather than handing us a clear answer. And when you look at how Vaults 31, 32, and 33 actually function, those dots start lining up uncomfortably well. These vaults don't behave like independent shelters. They behave like components in a single long-term system. Vault 31 preserves leadership, keeping Vault-Tec's managerial class intact across centuries. Vault 32 appears unstable by design, with overseers installed, replaced, or removed as needed. It functions like a testing ground, where leadership models can fail without collapsing the entire experiment. Vault 33, meanwhile, serves as a baseline population. That doesn't mean Vault 33 is free or untouched. Far from it. Marriages are arranged. Reproduction is monitored. Information is carefully curated. But these are social controls, not overt biological modifications. Vault 33 represents managed humanity rather than altered humanity, a comparison point. This structure mirrors Vault-Tec's obsession with controlled variables, and in that context, the mention of F.E.V. stops feeling random. It starts feeling philosophical. If Vault-Tec believes the problem with the old world was human nature, then the ultimate solution isn't survival, it's optimization. Not stronger humans, but more obedient leaders. Not monsters, but managers who believe hierarchy is natural and dissent is a flaw. This episode reinforces that idea through another subtle callback to classic Fallout lore, the water crisis in Vault 33. In Season 1, Vault 33's water chip breaks, directly echoing the opening premise of Fallout 1, where Vault 13's failing water chip forces the protagonist to venture into the wasteland. In Season 2, we're finally seeing the consequences. Crops are failing. Water is becoming scarce. And scarcity doesn't just create danger, it creates moral compromise. That's why the inbreeding support group suddenly matters. At first glance, the inbreeding support group feels like dark humor. But in Episode 4, it's thriving. It has members. It has resources. It has snacks and drinks at a moment when Vault 33 is running out of both. When people are hungry and thirsty, comfort becomes currency. Of course people join. Of course they stay. What started as emotional support has turned into a survival hub, quietly gaining influence as the vault destabilizes. This growing pressure is what drives Betty to investigate Vault 31, and when she does, she uncovers something catastrophic. Vault 31 has been abandoned. The cryopods are empty. Norm is gone, and Bud Askins is found alive but humiliated, stuffed upside down in what looks like a mock trash can. This discovery creates an existential crisis for the entire Vault system. Betty and Steph were never meant to operate independently. They were caretakers of breeding vaults, maintaining genetic stability until someone from Vault 31 arrived every 30 years to continue the process. Vault 31 wasn't optional. It was the backbone of the experiment, and now that backbone is gone. This is where the contrast between Betty and Steph becomes critical. Betty is clearly panicking. Her vault is running out of water. The structure she relied on has collapsed. Steph, on the other hand, appears calm, almost opportunistic. She's in Vault 32, which still has water, and she seems far more willing to bend or break Vault-Tec policy to secure her position. That tension explodes when Steph offers Betty a deal. She mentions a locked keepsake box, something Hank brought with him to Vault 31 from before the war. If Betty retrieves it, Steph will consider granting her access to Vault 32's water. This moment is huge. So far, we've only seen one keepsake box like this in the entire series. Barb's. Earlier in Season 2, we see Cooper Howard's wife packing her belongings into a keepsake box before entering the vault. And it's not a coincidence that Hank MacLean was Barb's assistant. The timeline and relationships make it entirely plausible that this is the same box Steph is after. What's inside it is still unknown. It could be personal. It could be classified data. It could be something Vault-Tec never intended to lose. What matters is that Steph is willing to leverage water, life itself, to get it. This raises a bigger question. How much do these overseers actually know? Vault-Tec has always operated on strict need-to-know levels. It's entirely possible that even Betty and Steph don't fully understand the experiment they're maintaining, but the regular vault dwellers are starting to notice something is wrong. That's where Chad comes in. Up until now, Chad has been reactive rather than proactive. He follows rules. He helps when asked. But in this episode, something changes. After witnessing Steph break vault policy and manipulate Betty, Chad finally acts. He starts searching through Steph's belongings. It's a small moment, but narratively, it's massive. This is the first time an ordinary vault resident actively investigates authority, and that ties everything back to Norm. Norm's real danger isn't that he escaped Vault 31. It's that he understands how authority works inside Vault-Tec's system. He knows leadership is often just a story people agree to believe. Buds follow him not because he's proven, but because he fits the myth they were trained to accept. That makes Norm an unplanned variable in a system that depends on predictability. If Vault-Tec's endgame involves engineered leadership and controlled populations, then someone who can hijack authority without authorization is a catastrophic flaw. Norm wasn't selected. He wasn't frozen. He wasn't modified. And yet he's outperforming Vault-Tec's design using nothing but insight. The demon in the snow doesn't give us answers. It gives us warning signs. The water is running out. The reset vault is empty. Authority is being questioned, and the people inside the system are starting to realize the rules no longer protect them. The Deathclaw isn't the real monster of this episode. The real monster is the idea that Vault-Tec still believes it knows what humanity should become, and that this time, the experiment isn't about survival. It's about control.